Hello. What we want to do in this short video is to talk about 4 recent developments in the practice of assessment that you can use to help your students. As one faculty colleague to another, I found assessment one of the more difficult parts of the job. Finding the right questions, developing the right rubric, thinking through the different ways students might approach these different assessment tasks. It's not easy. So there's some developments that can help, and we're just going to review them so that you can think about how you can use them. The big idea here is that assessment for learning is as important as assessment of learning. And we're going to talk about methods that are emerging which enable us to balance both of these tasks, assessment, which is summative, and assessment, which is formative. So let's start. The first development is called adaptive learning and assessment. Here's what's happening. Because of machine intelligence and artificial intelligence, we can now create assessment activities which, as the student is doing them, enable the computer system to work out what the student is good at, what they're weak at, and where they need help. But it doesn't stop there. It goes further. It connects the student as an individual to those learning materials that will help them accelerate the learning they're already good at and work on the things that they're weak at. So it will rearrange the learning material to strengthen the potential for learning that the student has. There are a number of programs that enable this to happen. For example, Desire to Learn has a product called Knowledge Leap. There's a product called Dreambox, and Pearson has a product called Newton. All of these are used extensively for adaptive learning and assessment. Now, many of my colleagues as faculty members elsewhere, for example, across the western parts of Canada, where there are centres for machine intelligence, are using these systems to enable a better kind of online learning. An online learning which is much more personalised to the learning needs of individuals. As we develop learning management systems, these features will become more prominent. The good news is that the data that the students generate through completing quizzes and assessments are available to you, and you can then intervene to help students who are struggling with particular concepts or particular skills or techniques. Very powerful developments, and they're all using machine intelligence. You might want to take a look. The second thing we're going to look at is competency-based assessment. Rather than just using a quiz, a pencil and paper quiz, here we put students in real-life situations to get them to practice the skills, knowledge and understanding we've given them. In some subjects this is easier than others. In teaching apprentices, for example, we can give them practical tasks. Do this weld, perform this piece of plumbing, wire this circuit. Those are easy. In mathematics, we've been doing this all along. We give them a new set of problems which require them to use a different range of skills in a different combination from that they've just completed. But how do we do this in the arts? We've always done it in music. We give them a new piece that's just recently been composed, or a sight unseen piece to play. But in history, we might give them a box of artifacts and ask them to use historical methodologies to interpret these artifacts. So there's lots of approaches to competency. What we're seeing develop around the world is competency-based assessments being used to assess learning and applications of learning in the real world. How could you use that in your teaching? How could you use this to assess prior learning? Would it be helpful to develop a competency set of tools that students could use to assess how they're making progress in applying learning from their course to the real world? Some universities, like Western Governors University in the United States, are entirely basing their programs on competency-based assessments. It's worth thinking about, from your point of view as a faculty member, about how you could use this in your teaching. A third development that I think is going to be very attractive to most of us as faculty members is called machine-generated assessment. The worst moment in my faculty career came when I had to assess 700 students taking one course. I developed a set of questions and a set of rubrics, and I thought, I'm not sure these questions are the best ones I can come up with. Now, fortunately, we have the support of machine intelligence. And so there's some new software developing that enables us to get the machine to generate questions for us. Here's how it works. You give the machine a set of examples of questions that you've normally used for this course, or you create a set of questions. You also share the rubrics for this assessment so that the machine can see how you're using these assessments to mark and grade students. The machine also needs access to your course. It will then generate questions. Sounds a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? But it's actually happening. In one session, 60 questions and rubrics shared with the system generated 8,000 questions in less than a minute. These questions were also classified into the categories of knowledge and learning needed to be successful in this course. You still have to choose from these questions, but the task of generating them is much easier. What also happens here is you can develop an item bank so that your quiz or your questions or your summative assessment can be available at any time to a student. No two students could see the same questions if they took the exam at different times. So this is going to be a very powerful development, and it's already being used in the K-12 education system in some parts of North America, including Canada. I have more good news, and this is our fourth example of developments in assessment. It's called machine marking. Now, we're all used to machines being able to mark multiple choices. It's one of the reasons they're so popular. They can be marked quickly. But the more recent development is using machine technologies, computer technologies, artificial intelligence and machine intelligence to mark short essays, to mark more complex processes, to mark student behaviors. So, for example, there are examples emerging of machines being used to assess video examples of students performing routine tasks. If you take something like welding, the machine can assess whether or not the student is performing that process as well as they should. Some of this is in its early stages, particularly this video marking piece. But the marking of assignments in written form, particularly short and medium-long essays, is now becoming much more commonplace. You will see a lot of developments in this space over the next 2 to 3 years. It's a preoccupation of a lot of large companies who are dedicating a lot of money to this work. So, what's next? Well, I think the field of assessment is where a lot of attention is now being spent by individuals working with machine intelligence and artificial intelligence, but also by the academic community, which is expanding its use of online learning. There are developments in improving the security of assessment, making sure that the person you think is doing that assessment is in fact that person. And there's a lot of developments in automated generation of questions, generation of item banks, and assessment activities like marking. It'll soon be the case that when a student is ready, they can call an exam and sit it when they are ready, rather than at a set time. And that's been an ambition of many of us for many years. So, very practical developments here. You can generate questions faster and smarter. You can mark faster and smarter. But you still have to put your own personal touches on marking, because it's your feedback on assessment, whether it's formative or summative, and it's your personalization of that feedback that the student is waiting for. These tools and devices help, but they don't replace you. I hope this has been helpful. If you want to learn more, take a look at the Contact North faculty portal. There's a tips and tools section that has lots of useful ideas that will help you as a faculty member teach online effectively and well, and have fun doing so. Thank you for listening and watching. I'm Steve Murgatroyd for Contact North.